Assalamu alaikum YouTube, this is Mirza. In today's video, we will be investigating the topic of suffering and what the Qur'an has to say about it. Suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience. We try our best to avoid it, to forget it, and to escape from it. We are miserable when it touches us and relieved when it leaves us, but we cannot escape it. The Qur'an accepts that suffering is a part of life and that man has been created in adversity. Why one man is afflicted by it while another escapes from it is beyond our comprehension. God does what He wills. However, the Quran does give us some explanation and exposition into the nature of suffering. The two classes of men, the submitted and those who ascribe a partnership, are afflicted with suffering, albeit for different reasons. In the case of the submitted, it is a means of testing their resolve. God tries men with fear, hunger, and loss of wealth to separate the believers from the waverers. It is also possible that misfortune might actually be a blessing in disguise. In the case of those who ascribe a partnership, they may be afflicted with suffering to humble them. It may also be a consequence of rejection of God's guidance. The Quran is clear that all men face the consequences of their actions. Thus, suffering can also be a function of the deeds of men. Man also faces suffering to be reminded of the frailty and triviality of life. Indeed, if everyone be given a goodly life, full of pleasures, it would be a difficult test for the believers to prefer the hereafter to this life. This brings us back to one of the key attributes of the indifferent to warning and those who spurn guidance while claiming virtue, referred to as the Allazina Kafaru and the Al Kafirun, that they are given opulence and riches in this life. Nuh said, My Lord, they have opposed me and followed one whose wealth and children have increased him not save in loss. Chapter 71, verse 21. Religious and secular leaders of our time, like those before them, are engaged in exploiting men, amassing power, and hoarding wealth. They are increasing themselves only in loss and ruin. The ultimate end for them and their followers is the fire. O you who heed warning, many among the rabbis and the religious scholars consume the wealth of men in vanity and forsake the path of God. And those who amass gold and silver and spend it not for the cause of God, give thou them tidings of a painful punishment. The day it will be heated in the fire of hell, then therewith will be branded their foreheads, and their sides, and their backs. This is what you amassed for your souls. Taste what you amassed. Chapter 9, verses 34 and 35. And when they will dispute together in the fire, then those who were despised will say to those who were proud, We were your followers. Can you avail us something against a portion of the fire? Those who were proud will say, We are all in it. God has judged between the servants. Chapter 40, verses 47 and 48. The primary argument used by atheists in their denial of God is, if God is merciful and omnipotent, then why does He allow suffering in the world? The assumption in this argument is that suffering is bad, whereas ease is good. This is, however, not true. Suffering and adversity strengthen one's character and resolve. A life devoid of pain and full of pleasure leads to a very shallow and superficial existence. Such a person lacks the determination and resolve which are at the heart of what makes a man. Leaving aside this reality, the fact is that God does what He wills, and He is not questioned about what He does. We are to trust in God and believe Him when He proclaims that He is the omnipotent, the merciful, and the loving. We do not understand why God does what He wills, but our hearts are assured that we are not wronged in the slightest. We are to trust in God's providence and be patient over what befalls us. Thus, the Quran's answer to the atheist argument is, God is the knowing judge. He does what He wills, and He is not questioned about what He does. We can only invoke His mercy and ask His forgiveness for our transgressions. Suffering as a means to test and strengthen men. Then sent He down upon you after distress, security, slumber overcoming a number of you. And a number had worried their souls, assuming about God other than the truth, the assumption of ignorance, saying, Have we any part of the affair? Say thou, All the affair belongs to God. They hide within themselves what they reveal not to thee, saying, Had we any part of the affair, we would not have been slain here. Say thou, Had you been in your houses, those for whom killing had been ordained would have gone forth to their resting places, and that God might try what is in your breasts, and that He might refine what is in your hearts. And God knows what is in the breasts. Chapter 3, verse 154. And what befell you the day the two hosts met was by God's leave, that He might know the believers, and that He might know the waverers. And it was said to them, Come, fight for the cause of God, or repel. They said, Had we known of fighting, we would have followed you. They were nearer to denial that day than to faith, saying with their mouths what was not in their hearts, and God is most aware of what they conceal. Chapter 3, verses 166 and 167. Do men think that we will be left to say, We believe, and will not be subjected to means of denial? And we subjected to means of denial those who were before them. God will know those who are truthful, and He will know the liars. Chapter 29, verses 2 and 3. And as for man, when his Lord tries him by honoring him and providing him with ease, he says, My Lord honors me. And when He tries him by straightening his provision, he says, My Lord humiliates me. Chapter 89, verses 15 and 16. Suffering as a function of our deeds. Or when misfortune befell you, having cost the double thereof, you said, Whence is this? Say thou, It is from yourselves. God is powerful over all things. Chapter 3, verse 165. How will it be when misfortune befall them because of what their hands have sent before them? Then will they come to thee, swearing by God, We intended only good conduct and success. Chapter 4, verse 62. Wheresoever you be, death will overtake you, and though you be in castles built high, it will find you. And if good befalls them, they say, This is from God. And if evil befalls them, they say, This is from thee. Say thou, All is from God. Then what ails these people? They scarcely understand a statement. What befalls thee of good, it is from God, and what befalls thee of evil, it is from thyself. And we send thee to mankind as a messenger, and sufficient is God as a witness. Chapter 4, verses 78 and 79. And had the doctors of the law believed and been in prudent fear, we would have removed their evil from them, and made them enter the gardens of bliss. And had they upheld the Torah and the gospel and what was sent down to them from their Lord, they would have eaten from above them and from under their feet. Among them is a prudent community, but many of them evil is what they do. Chapter 5, verses 65 and 66. And when good came to them, they said, This is ours. And if evil befall them, then they saw an omen in Musa and those with him. In truth, their omen was but with God, but most of them know not. Chapter 7, verse 131. And when we make men taste mercy, they exult thereat. And if evil befalls them because of what their hands have sent before them, then they despair. Chapter 30, verse 36. And when affliction touches man, he calls to us. Then when we confer upon him grace from us, he says, It has but been given me according to knowledge. The truth is, it is a means of denial, but most of them know not. There said it those before them, but there availed them not that which they earned. Then the evil they earned befell them. And those who do wrong among these, there will befall them the evil of what they earn, and they cannot escape. Chapter 39, verses 49 to 51. And what befalls you of misfortune, it is because of what your hands earn, but he pardons much. Chapter 42, verse 30. And if they turn away, we send thee not a custodian over them. Upon thee is only the communication. And when we cause man to taste mercy from us, he exults thereat. And if evil befalls them because of what their hands sent before them, then is man an ingrate. Chapter 42, verse 48. Those who turned back among you the day the two hosts met, the shaitan but caused them to slip through some of what they earned. But God has pardoned them. God is forgiving, forbearing. Chapter 3, verse 155. God punishes whom he wills. And the rabbinic Jews and the Nazarenes say, We are the sons of God and his beloved. Say thou, why then does he punish you for your transgressions? The truth is, you are but mortals among those he created. He forgives whom he wills, and punishes whom he wills. And to God belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth, and what is between them, and to him is the journey's end. Chapter 5, verse 18. And to God belongs the dominion of the heavens and the earth. He forgives whom he wills, and he punishes whom he wills. And God is forgiving, merciful. Chapter 48, verse 14. Suffering as a warning for men to take heed. And we sent to communities before thee. Then we took them with affliction and adversity, that they might become humble. Oh, that when our disaster came upon them, they had but grown humble. But their hearts hardened, and the shaitan made what they did fair to them. And when they had forgotten that whereof they had been reminded, then we opened upon them the gates of all things. When they had exulted in what they were given, we took them unawares, and then were they dumbfounded. And cut off was the root of the people who did wrong. And praise belongs to God, the Lord of all mankind. Chapter 6, verses 42 through 45. And we sent to a city any prophet only to take its people with affliction and adversity, that they might be humbled. Then we changed the place of evil for good, until they increased, and said, Adversity and prosperity did touch our fathers, and we took them unawares when they perceived not. Chapter 7, verses 94 and 95. And we divided them in the earth as communities. Among them are the righteous, and among them are other than that. And we tried them with good things and evil, that they might return. Chapter 7, verse 168. See they not that they are subjected to means of denial once or twice every year? Then do they turn not in repentance, nor do they take heed. Chapter 9, verse 126. And those who believe not in the hereafter are astray from the path. And if we had mercy on them, and removed what is with them of distress, they would insist upon wandering blindly in their inordinacy. And we seized them with punishment, but they yielded not to their Lord, nor became humble. When we had opened for them the gate of severe punishment, then were they in despair thereat. Chapter 23, verses 74 through 77. Corruption appears on land and sea because of what the hands of men have earned, that he might let them taste some of what they have done, that they might return. Chapter 30, verse 41. And we will make them taste of the lower punishment before the greater, that they might return. Chapter 32, verse 21. And we showed them no proof save it was greater than its sister, and we seized them with the punishment, that they might return. Chapter 43, verse 48. God removes suffering from the believers. Oh, that a city had but believed and profited by its faith, save the people of Yunus. When they believed, we removed from them the punishment of disgrace in the life of this world, and gave them enjoyment for a time. Chapter 10, verse 98. And had the people of the cities believed, and been in prudent fear, we would have opened upon them blessings from the sky and from the earth, but they rejected, so we seized them for what they earned. Chapter 7, verse 96. God grants respite from suffering. And let not those who are indifferent to warning think that we but reprieve them good for their souls. We but reprieve them that they might increase in falsehood, and they have a humiliating punishment. Chapter 3, verse 178. And had God hastened for men the ill, as they would hasten the good, their term would have been concluded. Leave thou those who look not to the meeting with us wandering blindly in their inordinancy. Chapter 10, verse 11. Suffering as a blessing in disguise. So they set out, and they found a servant from among our servants to whom we had given mercy from us, and taught knowledge from our presence. Musa said to him, May I follow thee, that thou teach me something of what thou hast been taught of sound judgment? Said he, Thou canst not be patient with me, and how can thou be patient over what thou hast not encompassed in experience? He said, Thou wilt find me, if God should will, patient, and I will not disobey thee in a matter. Said he, If thou wouldst follow me, ask thou me not about anything, until I relate remembrance of it to thee. When they had embarked on a boat, he made a hole therein. He said, Hast thou made a hole therein to drown its people? Thou hast done a grave thing, said he. Said I not that thou canst not be patient with me? He said, Take thou me not to task for what I forgot, nor burden thou me in my affair with difficulty. So they set out. When they had met a lad, he killed him. He said, Hast thou killed a pure soul for other than a soul? Thou hast done a detestable thing. Said he, Said I not to thee that thou canst not be patient with me? He said, If I ask thee about anything after this, then keep thou not in company with me. Thou hast attained from me an excuse. So they set out. When they had come to the people of a city, they asked its people for food, but they refused them hospitality. And they found therein a wall upon the point of collapse, and he set it upright. He said, If thou hadst wished, thou couldst have taken recompense for it. Said he, This is the parting between me and thee. I will inform thee of the interpretation of that thou hast not borne with patience. As for the boat, it belonged to poor people working on the sea, and I wished to mar it, for there was behind them a king, taking every boat by force. And as for the lad, his parents were believers, and we feared he would burden them with inordinancy and denial. And we intended that their Lord should give them in exchange better than him in purity and near in mercy. And as for the wall, it belonged to two fatherless lads in the town, and there was beneath it a treasure for them. And their father was righteous, and thy Lord willed that they should reach maturity, and to bring forth their treasure as a mercy from thy Lord. And I did it not by my command. That is the interpretation of what thou hast not been patient in. Chapter 18, verses 65 through 82. Suffering imposed upon those who reject God's guidance. When we have seized their opulent ones with punishment, then will they cry out, Cry not out this day, you will not be given help from us. My proofs were recited to you, and you turned back therefrom on your heels, being proud thereat, talking to no purpose into the night. Chapter 23, verses 64 through 67. Man's share of suffering decided beforehand. No misfortune befalls in the earth or in yourselves, save as in the decree before we bring it into being. That is easy for God, that you grieve not over what eludes you, nor exult at what comes to you. And God loves not every egoist and boaster. Chapter 57, verses 22 and 23. This concludes my presentation on the topic of suffering in the Quran. May God guide you to his straight path. Peace be upon you.